So part of this relates to visioning. And we are so excited because we really believe a key way of working together is to vision together. I mean, think about that. If my vision is a child who graduates in the top 3%, and your vision is, I'm really worried about these kids who don't get enough to eat, who are coming to school and feeling a lack of success, how are we working together to achieve this common goal? Or where is the common goal if we don't have a common vision? So we wrote this book back before COVID and said, you know what, wouldn't it be fun during this time when everything was kind of going along with education, no big, huge needs? We said, let's write about visioning because, again, something brings me joy. I love being in visioning groups, I have to say. I am kind of a groupie when it comes to things like this because I get to hear from others. I love learning from others. You might look at yourself. How do you love to learn? Well, I'm an academic. I love to read, but I love being with people and learning together and feeling like we are on the right path. So we wrote this book thinking, well, it'd be fun. And then COVID hit. And then there was all this, oh my God, the racial strife. I mean, tears come to my eyes when I think about what some people have been going through, not only in the last 4 months, but for years, for decades, for centuries. And I can't believe here it is, 2020, we're still going through that. So we have an opportunity now. And I was saying to a group the other day, it's kind of amazing that when we push the pause button, which is what we've done with COVID, we've gotten out of the everyday. You know, you can't race to your next meeting, get in your car and Zoom off someplace else, Zoom it with your car. Instead, you're Zooming to a Zoom meeting, right? A little different. You can't do that. But in the middle of this process, then we have people around the world supporting Black Lives Matter, supporting people from different cultures. And it's almost if, I wonder if we really would have heard what we needed to hear if it hadn't been this serious, if we hadn't been sheltered in. So we believe visioning is really, really crucial. And as bad as things are, there are things to feel grateful for. And one of them may be that we are actually listening more. And maybe our vision will become more clear because we are going through everything right now. Okay. So with your vision, we suggest, and it's hard right now to think about the ideal. I mean, I could have done that, a whole different presentation back in December of last year or November of last year. In fact, I did these visioning sessions. You'd come in and you say, like, what would you really like to have? Well, some of it seems pie in the sky now. So we ask people to think about the ideal, think about the practical, like who's going to implement it, will it really work? Be inclusive, but be flexible. Know that you're going to explore at times. Have some boldness to what you do, though, because boldness helps to build clarity. It helps to build support. It helps you to prioritize. And make sure part of it has empathy. So these visions are ones you can look at from different angles. And it takes time. It's an iterative process. You don't do a visioning process overnight. There we are. We have 8 steps. And the first one, this was kind of before COVID, we said, oh, get a visioning team. So you, the school leader, and we write our books a lot of times for school leaders, you know, think about your visions. Don't do it yourself. Don't be the lone person going out with a vision. Nope. It has to be collective. Okay. So think about who's going to be supporting you. Form a steering team. Isn't that a nice word? They're going to help guide the process. Determine who's going to be involved, as you have your visioning sessions, who's going to come together, work on a first draft, and then there's the afternoon steps we'll talk about later. Sounded really good, but we had to back up a little. And we've backed up to the point where we say, talk to people about your visions and think about the short-term vision, like what would be okay from a practical, empathetic, flexible perspective right now for the next few months. And then think 6 to 8, 9 months from now, we're out of this. And what would you like? So that's kind of what we do. We do a little of this behind the scenes chatting and thinking before we really get involved in the formal structure. Next slide. Okay, this is my back to nature, okay, which is a lot of what I'm doing now. I'm taking walks every day. And so what I want you to do, close your eyes as you're comfortable and think about your vision for your school, your community. What could work really well? And just focus. You can write notes as you want to, but then come back and close your eyes and focus again. We'll do this for only a couple minutes. As you continue to vision, think about the children. What is your wish for them? What's your vision for them? What's your vision for helping to alleviate their trauma? How will you be a part of the solution? Now think about yourself. How do you bring your skills and your talents to the vision? Think about your collaborators. If you're part of an outside agency, how are you going to collaborate with educators? If you are in a school as an educator, how do you collaborate with your community providers? How do you work together? What I'd like you to do is go into breakout rooms again and discuss what you've written. So we'll go into breakout rooms for maybe 3 minutes of discussion and then a general 3 minutes of coming back and sharing. Okay, and as we're coming back, I hope you have someone who can speak for your group. Let's get 3 people just to mention 2 or 3 visions, right? Things that come up. Candace, you are in my group. Why don't you start?
I just said that my vision for my classroom would just be, I'm going to be teaching 7th grade this fall, and my vision is just for them to come into my classroom and for it to be a safe environment where they would feel connected. And so I just envisioned us doing exercises together that I think would help facilitate that.
Okay, and as others are back, who else would like to speak out now? You can probably try to unmute yourself and say something. We'll see if that works. We get 50 people talking at once. Oh, they have to ask. Okay, have to ask. Okay. So put your name in the chat box, or I will call on a couple of people as well. Let's see. Well, I'll just go back to people who are helping to facilitate. So Julia, thinking about your breakout room, what are 1 or 2 things you heard?
Well, we had 2 basically. One was just the vision of being able to meet teachers and staffs where they're at, and kind of knowing they've been away from school for a long time and coming back and just kind of meeting them where they're at and kind of moving from there. And then we talked about just a general of new teams developing where there may be teachers that have been there at the school, and then new teachers are joining their team because of hiring new staff, and kind of getting to a place where they're all on the same page or just understanding things in the same way. So there's the new staff that haven't been part of the team for a while, getting their strengths and understanding their kind of views of things, and then the staff that have been there, kind of what they've experienced up to this point, and that kind of melding together as a vision as well.
Fantastic.
So those were our 2.
Thank you. I mean, there's so many wonderful visions. I think because of the time, we're going to hold off, and you'll get more chances to talk about visioning this afternoon, okay? What you're doing is so important. It really is. Thank you. Let's move on. I think I've said all this before, right? We know community is important. We help each other in so many ways. And whatever we can do to strengthen our community makes things better for each of us. And it's not always easy, right? Because sometimes there's different ideas. about what to do and how to do it. And sometimes we feel like we don't have time to really process so that everyone can share their vision and figure out what their role is and how they support each other. But sometimes you have to know you'll make mistakes too. There's errors along the way. It's not a perfect path. Right now with COVID, some of this is trailblazing. So we have to forgive ourselves and each other. And we need to think about what is it we can do to be stronger, because we are stronger together. Okay, next. So as part of the CTLC, we just love this. You know, there's a whole bunch of literature that says if you're doing change, systems change, what you want to do is you want to work with some people on the front line. You want to develop a community of support. And you want to work on building capacity, which is something, again, that doesn't happen overnight. It's something that we build towards. And sometimes it's small steps, which is fine. And sometimes you'll be impatient, which, you know, I have to say that's me at times. But then you have to back off and have your awareness creep in and say, not quite there, but work together. So this being together is important. And we do a lot of that with our CTLC, our Childhood Trauma Learning Collaborative, in many, many different ways. So we have these supports. We have a newsletter that we love. I love the title too. We came up with this title a few months ago, Compassion Action. So it's not enough to have the words. You have to have the action too. Okay. We have a toolkit on back to school. And Dana mentioned that earlier. And we not only have a toolkit, we have a tip sheet that will be coming out shortly. So we have like our 40 pages that is summarized in, I don't know, 5 pages maybe. We did focus groups this spring with people who are part of our community about their stress. And you can think about like what things were like in April. And we compared their stress to traditionally what we know about stress for educators in particular, school systems. And things have shifted. You know, salary isn't as important. Feeling valued is really important. In April, teachers had a sense that people really missed them, wanted them to be more engaged, and realized more about their value. You know, and now I have to say things are shifting because we have some people upset because schools aren't always opening and it's not convenient. And wow, there we have those differences of opinion that get in the way of community. But anyway, if we go back to April, we can give you a good sense of the importance of self-care too. Major theme supported by research. We have a guide that really gives you more details about the model that we're talking about. So all this is available at the website. And we have a webinar, one we did with Life is Good Playmakers. They're out of Boston, you may know them. And on opening up with optimism and connection. And that word optimism is a strange one to be using right now. But as Steve Gross would say, and he's the founder, you know, it's optimism in the moment. You think about a mindful moment, a deep breath that feels good, being outdoors and basking in the feeling of things are okay. We can help others to feel optimistic in the moment by helping them to have these precious moments. And sometimes, those of you who meditate know, sometimes we say it's the little moments between the other stuff that end up being the most important. So take the time, be in the moment.
We also have a really amazing tool for any person on this webinar today who wants to become an individual member of our Basecamp project, but also anyone who takes the SCATE is invited to join. We share all of the resources that Chris just mentioned that we produce as a team, but we also share the evidence-based practices from trusted organizations that we use research from all the time on Basecamp as well. And there's also research interns who are available to answer any questions about specific topics that members might have. You can go to our topic-based teams, for example, leadership and compassionate school communities, social emotional learning, mental health funding, and you can ask questions, and we have a 48-hour turnaround rate. It's a little underutilized. We don't have people asking those questions, so our interns are ready and waiting for you when you join us. And it's also a great space that educators and agencies and community members can talk to each other about issues that they're having in their specific states and connect with others in other states in the New England region. So we would love if you could join us as a CTLC member. If you have questions about that, please contact me, Chris, Martha, or Ingrid, who we're going to put our contact information up in just a minute. We do have 4 upcoming events. We briefly touched on the SCATE. If that was interesting to you and you're only staying for the morning session, you can join us on any one of these 20 to 30-minute sessions where we'll get into how SCATE can be used to address trauma, justice, and equity, also how to alleviate stress, how to respond to the trauma that COVID-19 specifically has brought, and how to use core learning teams to address trauma using the SCATE. Now we are ready for some questions from you all. You can type in the chat or let us know if you'd like us to unmute you.
I would invite you too to write your questions down. So if you have 2 or 3, we might be able to get to them this afternoon. We're going to have another Q&A at the end of the day. Or by writing it down, you may feel like, okay, yeah, you want to give yourself a couple minutes to share your ideas, your thoughts. While you're doing this, I could actually have a little discussion with someone, one of our team members. Is there a volunteer? How about Chris Hallett? Are you still with us, Chris?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good, good. So you've heard quite a bit this morning, right? We covered mindfulness. We talked about our childhood learning trauma collaborative. We did some visioning together. We talked about the neuroscience and neurobiology. As you think about teachers in your district or the leaders you work with, what questions do you think they might have after a presentation like this?
I think that people might be considering the SCATE, how they might be able to incorporate that in their schools, and then what do you use with how do you use that information to drive discussion and make informed decisions? Thinking about how basics, just how to set up your classroom and your schools to make them feel welcoming, and what little tricks can we share with each other, steal from each other to set those classrooms up in those schools to make them feel as comfortable as possible for students so that they are feeling welcome. And then with COVID, you know, what we're dealing with right now with even for some schools, they're remote, some schools are opening back up for students to be in. How do we make our parents feel comfortable and our community members who maybe aren't welcome, not necessarily not welcome, but not able to come into the buildings as they have in the past? And how do we bridge that gap and you know, tear down that barrier so that we can continue to build those relationships with outside providers and families to make them feel comfortable? Those are some of my thoughts on that.
Let me start with the last one, because someone on the chat line also asked about parents and including parents. And there's not a quick answer, right? However, if you go back to our visioning exercise, closing your eyes, taking a moment and imagining it, so you might, you know, connect with some inner part of yourself, that inner wisdom that will help you say, you know, there might be something else that could be done. Something that's totally out of the box that you wouldn't have thought of by just going through your normal, let me look at my agenda and my calendar and fit this in. So sometimes it is the pause, the time for reflection, and then the dialogue that comes out of the quiet that can be very, very helpful. Because what happens, and you know this, is we still our brain, right? We get rid of that outside noise. And when you do that, then you're more likely to hit upon something that's the true gem. So for the questions you have, I'm going to say to you, most of you can start to answer your own questions. You know, there's a few technical things like SCATE, sure. We can give you more information. We will give you more information because we care deeply about it. We think it's a very useful tool. And I think as you get information, you'll find out how rich it is in terms of the resources. It's not only the graphs, there's more to come this afternoon. But the other questions, how do we relate? How do we connect? What's our community like? How do we make things better than they were last year even? Those are critical questions. And I think if you work with a team of leaders and you share thoughts, that there is a chance, just a chance, that in fact you may find these solutions that are just amazing. Of course, that's my pep talk. That's what I like to do, right? Is there another question somebody, well, if they can't connect with parents, they can reach out to parent organizations. That's right. And that's one of the things we do. There's a Federation for Children with Special Needs in Boston that we collaborate with some. And we try to gain some input from them. And we think about what they can tell us about parent needs and parent strengths and how to listen to parents. So it's truly a team that's operating together. We are right about noon, a couple of minutes before. Let's go to the next slide. So here are our emails. I had one or two people ask me private questions during the session, and I said, go to my email, send me another question later, and I'll get back to you. So we're happy to do that to help. And we still have plenty of time today to answer questions. Here's our newsletter. And, you know, you can get it every other month. But by signing up, you'll be on our same mailing list. You'll be on the distribution list for our products that come out in the in-between months. So I'm supposed to remind, this is partly my reminder for self. The back of your packet, I think this is where it is, or it may be a separate document. There is a practical strategies handout. I want to make sure, Dana and Ingrid, that everyone has a copy of that. So if we'll just double check, oh, and I see somebody not so sure, we may need to send out another email to make sure you get it, which is fine. It gives you about 5 pages of things that will be practical strategies that you can use related to children's safety, creating a welcoming environment, and a couple others. So Ingrid and Dana, one of the things, actually renamed questions to address collective trauma. I didn't realize we renamed it. Okay. A checklist of questions to think, of things to think about. Thank you. So the questions to think about is, I'm going to give you 2 questions right now that I would like you to think about during the lunch. And I did get something back from Ingrid that says the practical strategies is a link in the packet you received. That makes sense. That's where I saw it. So you're not going to see pages of it, but you'll see a link to it. So 2 questions during lunchtime. So during lunchtime, first, you're going to have an hour break. Second, there's a chance to watch or participate in our yoga. So you will get a yoga video. You'll get to see the video. You can experience it in whatever way is comfortable for you. Looking, checking in periodically, actually doing. And here's the link to the practical strategies. And then third, I want you to think through something, because I want you to stay in the moment with the things that have come up this morning. And part of it is our awareness of kids and what they're going through. And there are probably some things that you've kind of figured out. And there's probably other things where you still don't have a clue. So what is one thing where you really would like support, advice, problem solving? One thing that's weighing heavily on your mind right now related to schools and kids. Okay, so one thing is the negative. And then the other side of the coin is that during these times, sometimes wonderful, wonderful things emerge, solutions that we wouldn't have thought of. So is there one thing that you'll take back and you really hope you'll be able to continue to do next year, the year beyond? So think about two things as you do whatever you're going to do during lunch. One thing where you need help, support, one thing that you want to bring forward because it's just so rich and brings you a sense of joy. Okay, we will see you back here at 1.